In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate waters from the waters." So God made the dome and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. God called the dome sky, and there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And then God said, "Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with a seed in it. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the sky, and the lesser light to rule the night and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky." So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves of every kind with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things, and wild animals of the earth of every kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. and God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make humans in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So, God created humans in His image. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." And God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw everything that He had made, and indeed, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the seventh day, God finished the work that He had done, and He rested on the seventh day from all the work that He had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that He had done in creation. This is our sacred story. Thanks be to God.
I know what you're thinking. Bob can do the music and preach? Well, let me dissuade you from any notion that perhaps that is a wish list for me. It is not. And even if it was, I know I could never come close to the quality of preaching that we enjoy every week. We are well served by Sarah and Timothy, and I'm grateful to be a part of their ministry. And for 25 years, I feel like I've been very lucky to be part of a ministry that has, ongoing for 25 years, been the most impactful in this city. So, to you, Timothy, I'm especially grateful for allowing me to answer a particular call to share a word with you today, with the congregation today. I think that was something I felt very strong about. And not because I've been here for 25 years, but because of what I was called to tell you. So that's why I'm here. So me standing here before you in the pulpit is about as, well, it reminds me of a story. So picture it. There's a stage set, a beautiful grand piano with the lid propped up. The lights are up in the hall and the audience is gathering, and there's all this excitement because something's going to happen. And you're just looking at that piano thinking, I can't wait to hear what's going to come out of that piano. And then the lights start to dim, the audience comes into a hush, And then from behind the curtain comes an elephant wearing a tuxedo, white tie and tails. And he lumbers across the stage to the keyboard, flips his tails and sits down on the bench and composes himself, and the audience gets quiet. And at that moment, the elephant says to himself, "Why am I here? I'm a flute player, for God's sake." So me here in the pulpit today is perhaps about as incongruous as the elephant in my story. But I think it might be appropriate for me to take this pulpit about every 25 years or so, and God willing, depending on how things go today, and perhaps maybe in 25 years, I'll meet you back here again when I'll be 89 years old, and I'll have a few more things to say. Our focus today is on the divinity within. Now, have you ever wondered, where does creativity come from? Perhaps we have a clue from today's scripture lesson. Or perhaps the Big Bang experience or explanation works for you. In either case, creation was set in motion by God, and it would seem to me that God's DNA is all over it. Father Richard Rohr, Franciscan monk, founder of the Center for Action and Contemplation in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and oft-quoted theologian from this pulpit, and a mystic, has aptly shared this point in his book, The Universal Christ, in which he makes a very strong case that God is in everything, period. George Gardner, many of you know George, musician and son of our former senior pastor, John Gardner, who as a child grew up knowing me simply as Uncle Bob, asked me after a performance we had done together, how did I know that God existed? I paused, thinking maybe this would be better handled by his dad, the man who happened to be my boss, and a friend, and oh my God, who needs that kind of pressure? I took a deep breath, and then I replied with a few questions. When he and I performed together, could he not sense the connection we had through our creative music making? The give and take, the flow of our music making that was engaging us at a cellular level that surpasses all understanding. The fact that he and I could connect through a creative endeavor was simply too awesome to ignore. There was something inside us that tied us together. That, I said, George, is the divinity within, and that's how I know God exists. Now, if God is in everything, then it's reasonable to assume and to infer that God is in each of us. Would you not agree? The fact that we can be creative is evidentiary. Even Jesus said, we are the body of Christ, that God works through us. God works through us because God is in us. So what does that mean for each of us? Do we take responsibility for this unique relationship with the Creator in all creation? Do we spend time engaging our creative selves to make the world better? Do we use our creativity to help each other to create possibilities for peace? To create a world that is welcoming to all God's children, such that we make happen God's kingdom on earth as it is in heaven? Part of our call, our collective call as human beings, is to engage our creative selves. It is the divine dance, as Rohr might say, between our ego and the divinity that is instilled within us. When we engage our creative selves, we delve deeper into God's reality, which is simply the realm of love. Every time I sit at that keyboard for you on Sunday, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm connecting with the divinity within. So when was the last time you created something or just engaged your creativity? Can you ever remember saying, I'm just going to go outside and play? And I don't mean exercise or some team sport, but rather making an intentional decision to go completely unscripted, unplanned toward a random moment of creativity just for fun. And I wonder if any of you remember when we used to gather around the piano and just sing songs at random. Karaoke, maybe? Maybe, but I don't think it's quite the same thing. Al Genie, a friend of mine from Chicago who is a teacher, ethicist, and philosopher, in his book, The Importance of Being Lazy, talked about the gift of grandchildren in his life. As a parent, there was simply little time to play. But as a grandparent in retirement, he rediscovered the sheer joy of playing for the sake of playing. Being creative, using the imagination, and just being lazy. These were gifts he possessed all along, but at some point in his life, he muted them as if they were childish endeavors. And let me just insert here that Jesus said, "Let the children come unto me." And I don't think that is age specific. Al realized that he had been missing a very important part of his connection to the world and the God within it all, because he had more important adult things to concern himself with. Some years ago for Quest Club, I did a research paper on early childhood education, and I was struck by an author's suggestion to parents when considering purchasing the first computer for their child. The author said, when you receive the computer, open up the box, take out the computer, and then throw it away. And then give your child the box to play with. You would do a lot more for their fundamental development and overall lifelong disposition. Alice Parker, also a friend, now deceased, God rest her. She was a revered composer and humanist, a friend, and for a time, one of the artistic advisors for Heartland Sings. Famous for her hymn sings. In fact, she did one of those hymn sings from this very spot where I am standing here in the chancel. And during that hymn sing, she said, if I recall correctly, if we just spent more time singing together, we would find little appetite for fighting. So who made the rule that playing or being creative was a child thing? Who made the rule that only certain folks can sing in the choir, or play the piano, or write poetry, or dance, or paint, or act, or insert whatever creativity you want into the slot there? But who made a rule that that could only be done when we're children? And who made the cubbyhole that we hear today for the misfits who choose to live a life of poverty as an artist and called them the creative class? The truth is, the creative class is not limited to folks like me. In fact, it's the largest class of any we could even conceive because it encompasses all of us. So it seems to me that being creative has been undervalued for far too long. And this oversight is responsible, in my view, for much of the strife we see today. Now, this is not just a downer, there's hope here, because we already possess the necessary tools to change things. So what I felt called to tell you today is a charge. My charge to you is to reignite, reinvigorate, rediscover, and engage your creative selves and put it to work for good. Being creative awakens the divine spark within us. It connects us to the Creator, to one another, grows our understanding of life and our place in it. It helps us have compassion for others and more. It gives us access to the power to change the world, to bring God's kingdom into fruition. It enables us to find value in the world around us, to have compassion for our fellow human beings, to create a world in love. Now, make no mistake, your creativity can also be used to create great suffering. We need to constantly discern the value of our actions and if they work toward God's vision for a world in love. As I have learned from Father Richard Rohr, the ego is very clever. Our egos can easily take credit for the gift of creativity and delude us into believing in our own self-importance. Connecting with our creative self starts the divine dance between the God within us and our own ego. And when doing so, we need to exercise great care. We must regularly evaluate our motivations and discern the value of our actions to be sure that they're not egoic at their core. You might recall just a few weeks ago that Reverend Sarah, in her sermon, reminded us that our hearts have to be right first. Clean our own hearts first, be obedient to God's commandment to love. If we want to see a better world, we must see God's love within. Start with the soul of our own hearts. And last week, Reverend Timothy preached in part about resisting the devil within. So how do we squelch the devil within? I contend we do it by engaging our creativity, engaging the divinity within us. And in doing so, you have a chance to find a balance between your ego and that divine spark, which comes from the Creator. Many of you know that this is my last season as artistic director at Heartland Sings. As a result, in recent months, many of you have offered words of encouragement and often congratulating me on my impending retirement. No. In truth, musicians don't retire, they just decompose. Yes, I'll still be haunting my friends and colleagues at Heartland Sings as the artistic director emeritus, and of course, with your permission, I will still be here working at Plymouth for many years to come. While I'm not retiring, I am turning a page in my career as a pastoral musician and as an arts advocate. God willing, the next chapter for me will be, at least in part, dedicated to finding ways to help folks find a connection to their creativity, to their own divine spark, and the divinity within. Today, I'm starting with you. In the days ahead, I invite you to commit to the divinity within. Evoke your creativity every day. Discern what you are called to do to bring about God's kingdom. Every day, use your creativity to grow your relationship to the divine. Over time, it will expand your connection to God, to those around you, and to the Christ that is in everything. In doing so, I'm sure, in fact, I am certain that you will find the same blessings that I have found. The gift of the divine dance, the connection, the interacting, and playing with God to the point of becoming one again with the Creator. And all God's children say, Amen. Thank you. Our hymn that leads into the next section of our service is Precious Lord, number 472.
seated. As it is a fifth Sunday, only occurs a few times a year, this is a service where we have a time for healing. And so if there is a particular prayer concern, something that you wish to pray about, you are invited to come forward and have a time of prayer with Reverend Sarah or myself and one of the deacons, and to have that concern named and prayed about. And for anyone who decides to remain seated or to be seated, just you can be in an attitude of prayer and reflection during this time. I would invite anyone to come forward in need of prayer and the deacons to join us up front. As we move to the conclusion of our worship service, we have a closing hymn, God, the Lord of all creation, which is also found as an insert on the back of your bulletin. All are invited to stand and sing as you are able. May the love of God uphold you as the love of neighbor compels you. May the peace of Christ sustain you as the work of peace inspires you. May the communion of the Spirit direct you as the call to community beckons you. Go trusting in God along the way. Go in peace. Amen.